Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the place of the world you are now. Let me introduce myself. My name is Lola Perez Marin. I'm full professor of the University of Córdoba, and I'm going to introduce you in this second module of this course. The lesson dedicated to God production system. We are going to start with the lesson 2.2 dedicated to God production system. I would like to introduce you that, as maybe you know, goat and wine made the group that we call the small ruminants, and they have some similar characteristics or common characteristics in the production system that usually are exploited because in both cases we are talking about multi-product farms. I mean with this that we are going to have meat, we are going to have milk, we are going to have wool in the case of the ovine, or mohair in the case of the goat, and we are going to have leather. Small ruminants can exploit natural resources and land that are not that cannot be used for agriculture because they don't have a good quality for agriculture, but they can exploit these lands. Also, I would like to stress here that this kind of animal, small ruminants, has a very good adaptability to different climatic conditions, even sometimes hard conditions, and are very important for the socio-economical aspect of the population, because usually are linked to rural areas, and they keep people in rural areas because they make possible to create an environment of economic activity, of social activity. So it's an important aspect to be considered in this kind of farms. And also the last thing, but not less important, is this kind of animals are good for land maintenance, for the reduction of erosion, and also are very good for fire prevention because they clean the mountains, they clean the lands of this rest of vegetal material that could be very dangerous in the case of fires. The population of goats in the world is now around 780 millions of goats. By regions, we have that the biggest population is located in Asia, with more than the 60% of the goats. Then we have Africa with almost 30% of the total population of the world. Then we have America with about 4% of the population. And finally, we find Europe and Oceania. In Oceania, the population is very, very small, and in Europe it's around the 2% of the total population of the goat in the world. It's mainly located in the Mediterranean areas of Europe. In fact, the goat sector in Europe is located mainly in France, in Spain, and also in Greece. However, there is also an important population in the Netherlands, but it's true that the Mediterranean countries are the most important in this type of production. Traditionally, the goat farms are linked to less favored areas, but maybe we could say in the last 15 years, around the 15 last year, the goat farming has had a high development in different aspects related to production, to commercialization of the products. It had been what we call a high professionalization of the sector of this farming production, and this also it had been improved by the appearance of some associations, and this has promote this kind of farming. Also, an important aspect has been the development of breeding programs, usually links to a specific breeds, with a specific characteristic of production. Most of the time linked to the preservation of the local breeds. We have to say that there are very different types of farmers, of goat farmers, different types of goat production system. It's difficult to make just to say just a few things of the most popular production system, because it's true that in the case of goat production, the system are highly varied. But we are going to say in this lecture some of the most typical things that we can find in the goat farmings today. We have to say that in this case we can find micro farms with just 10 or 15 animals, and we can find also big farms of more than 500 animals or 1,000 animals. It depends on the type of production, of the intensity of the production, and also it depends on the localization, because as you can imagine, usually in Africa or in Asia we can find smaller farms, and in Europe and America we can find bigger farms, but even inside Europe we can find also small farms. So it's a very very it's a sector that is in which we can find many different options, but usually what if we have to say some trends, the trend is that in Europe most of the production is dedicated to dairy goat, to the production of milk, and in this case we talk about more intensive farms, and we talk about bigger farms. This is more or less the trends. In the opposite, we have in other places of the world, we have smaller farms, more focused in the production of meat, and without milking parlor. So this is more or less reflect the two sides of the production system. About the goat main characteristics, I have to say that they have many similarities with cattle and sheep. All of them are ruminants and have many things in common, but also they have many differences. So in the case of goats, we find differences in morphology, in feeding behavior, in grazing habits, in physical activity, in water requirements, in social behavior, in milk composition, etc. About the morphology, we have to say that the goats are less heavy than the other ruminants, have a short tail, right ears, has horns. The front is wider. They have a long neck. They have hair instead of wool, like in the case of the sheep. Both male and female have birds. Also, they are animals with a great strength and agility, and because of this, they have a strong hooves. And also very important, the shape of the lip. They have a less cleft upper lip, so this make them that, for example, the use of grass at ground level is more difficult for them than for the sheep. But in the opposite, they can, for example, eat trees. So this morphology also makes some condition makes some limitation or some advantage in the feeding behavior. Other main characteristic of goats' behavior is that they are very agile. They can move very quick, better than other ruminants. They can live in more adverse climatic conditions, and in particular, they are very well adapted to extreme hot and dry weather. They are very resistant to disease. In fact, they are more resistant than other ruminants, ovine and bovine. And also, they have a very good recovery, or very fast recovery after the deficient nutritional period. This is also very good. This is another consequence of this higher resistance. If we see now the habits and temperaments, we can say that they are very intelligent and sensitive ruminants, but also rebellious and daring. They like freedom and are very curious. You can see here in the picture, they are each one is looking at some place. They are, in comparison with the sheep, they are less routine and gregarious, but they have a hierarchical social structure, and they have the boss of the herd. So they are less gregarious, but they have a hierarchical social structure. They lies. They jump very easily. Of course, again, the adaptation to different climates. They prefer heat than cold. Regarding the reproduction, behavior, they are very precocious. Well-fed males can start the mount around 4 months. although the usual age is when they are 5 to 8 months. And in the case of females, they can start the reproduction activity at the age of 7 months, but usually they start between the age of 8 to 10 months. They have a good prolificacy, bigger than sheep, and also because of that they have a higher milk production capacity. Usually they can produce per day around between 3 to 5 liters, depending on the breed, depending on the production system, but they produce more milk per day than a sheep. About the feeding behavior, they have high capacity to feed intake. They can eat up to 5% of the life weight, and this is too much. They are very selective. They usually choose, if they have different options, they choose what they want to eat. So this is important to plan the feeding in this kind of animal. They can exploit poor pasture and thorny scrub habitats because they can digest high fiber products. They have high palatability and can distinguish very well the different flavors and taste. And for example, they prefer bitter flavors and they prefer fresh buds. One very characteristic thing is that they can consume scraps or trees, and if they have available these trees or scraps, the diet could be based in this until 40%. So we have to take this into account, because if, for example, we have a land where we don't want that the goats make any damage in the trees. It's important to know that they can do it, and this is because they can be in a bipedal posture. Also because they have a very strong and mobile upper lips and tongue, so this enable us to consume a scrap. Other characteristics of the feeding behavior is that usually they walk large distances during racing. We have also to take into account, we don't want because we have to know how much time they dedicate to it and not to walk. So this is important to know the use of the grazing by this kind of animal. It's important to know that also that as they are very selective, they reject pressed pasture and areas that are pastured by other species, so they can discard up to 50% of the pasture and until 20% of the feed that we provide them. And about the water requirements, usually an adult needs about 10 liters per day. A dry or replacement goat about 5 liters per day, and a kid 3 liters per day. We are going to see now which are the main production systems. according to the intensity of the production of the system. Um, we are going to distinguish in this case three type of production system: extensive, semi-extensive, and intensive production system. The extensive production system is based in herds that usually don't have territorial bases, so they are usually in mountainous areas, in areas that are not good for agriculture. Usually these kind of production systems are dedicated to meat production. The feeding is based on grazing and pastoralings. There is no supplementation. There's not feed supplementation. Usually in this case, there is not breeding planning. So goats and bucks are in the same batch during all the year. In this case, the target or the goal of production is just to have one calving per year. About the infrastructure, really they don't have infrastructure. They have, in the case they have rudimentary sheep folds, and usually the herds are conducted by shepherds. And in this kind of production, the breeds usually exploit are local or autochthonous breeds. In which some specific characteristics want to be expressed. The second type of production system are the semi-extensive systems. In this case, we have a better herd management. We have more what we call some planning for this management. Usually these kind of herds are dedicated to the production of milk and meat. So in this case, daily milking is present in this kind of system. The feeding is based mainly in grazing, but they have also some supplementation when in some season when it's needed, the supplementation of it. There is accommodation for kittens and sometimes for the adults in cold periods or in the night, and usually they have a milking parlor for the daily milking. The milk is the main product, and the meat production, the kids in this case, is the complementary activity for the farm. The last system production, the last production system is the intensive farms. In this case, the animals are housed indoor and are dedicated just to milk production. What they do with the kids? Usually, they sold the kids are sold with just very a few days, just after 3-4 days. Usually they are fed with artificial lactation. There is, in this case, they are a reproductive planning in different batches. They have, of course, milking parlor and different technologies. The farmer in this case has a higher qualification, so it's a type of production system that requires more inputs, but also usually have more benefits for the farmer. Here you are the goat production cycle. If we see here, we start in the calving, and after the calving, the mother start the lactation that usually has a duration of 10 months. During the lactation, at the same time of the lactation, the mother, after 2-3 months after the calving, are going to be mating, and then we are going to have another gestation. The duration is 5 months, and then we are going to have the dry period that usually is established 2 months before the calving. And we are going to start again the cycles. Here for the kids, in the very intensive production, the kids are the winning of the kids. It's around 1 or 3 days, between 1 to 3 days after the calving, and then they are fed with artificial lactation, and they usually produce the type of production is the suckling kit that is destined to meat production, and are the type of production that are more valorated, have more value in the market. If the kits are going to be used for the replacement of the mothers, they are going to be they are going to be with the hair in the same farm, until the winning that will be with 5 or 8 weeks. So we are going to have a longer winning, and then they are going to be fed with other material, with feeds, until they have the age and the physical development to be used for as a reproduction animal. The productive management in goats, usually there is three models, but the more usual when we are talking about dairy goats is the first one, that is one calving in 1 year. So in this case, what we have is 10 months of lactation for the mothers, and 2 months for the dry period. There is another option that is 3 calvings in 2 years, that is similar to one model that is very useful, that is very usual in sheep, but in the case of goats is just used when the herds are dedicated just to meat production, and is not recommended for milking herds. The last one that is not recommended at all, but we can find in some farms, that is to have 20 months of lactation. 24 months of lactation without dry the mother 2 months after 10 months of lactation. So this is not recommended at all. This is not good, and you are going to see why. You have here the curve of lactation for the goats with 1 calving per year. This is an usual curve of lactation. We have here in this axis the time, and we have the production in the y-axis. When we have the curve of lactation for goats that are producing milk during 24 months without the dry period, we have just another curve of lactation, but we have here we have the drop of the curve, and then we have a bit recovery, and we have a very strong drop here. So the production is really not good, and this is not good also for the physiology of the animals. So this is not recommended at all for the animals, even when the animals is if the farmer doesn't dry the animals, the animal is going to continue producing milk, but this is not a good production standard. About the product that we have in this goat system, the main product is the milk. Usually the milk is dedicated to cheese production. Usually are very demanded. In France, for example, the goat cheese are very appreciated. Sometimes also we can find liquid milk package, but it's not really very demanded. We have to say that the composition and the property of the goat milk is very different to the sheep cow milk. You have here that is an energetic milk with a lot of protein and essential amino acids. It's rich in calcium and vitamins. It's low in lactose. It's also low in folic acid, and even more digested, mainly because they have a low lactose content. If we go to the second main product, in this case we have the meat, but really the consumption is in the European Union is very, very low, just 0.2 kilograms per habitant per year. In other places, as Asia or Africa, the consumption is higher, but not in Europe. Really, in the developing countries, it's just a seasonal consumption. This meat have a typical smell and taste due to the content of erythenic acid. The carcasses are long, narrow, and lean. They have high protein content and a good nutritional value. And for the classification of the carcasses, usually it's used the color of the fat, of the cover fat, the color of the meat, and the coverture of fat in the pelvic. For goat meat production, we can distinguish three main kinds of meats or of type of production. In the first place, we can find what we call the meat coming from suckling kids. In this case, this is the main production. More or less around the world will be the 45% of the total goat meat production. It's the most demanded goat meat. Of course, it's also the type of goat meat that rise the higher prices in the market. In this case, we are talking about an animal of 30 days with a live weight around 8 to 10 kilograms. The second type of production is the production associated to kids. More or less could be the 20% of the production of goat meat in Europe, but it's also must be note here that in other part of the world, maybe in Asia, maybe in Africa, this type of production could have more could achieve higher production rates. In this case, we are talking about an animal with an age between 2 to 4 months, with a live weight of 18 to 25 kilograms. As it's not very demanded, this type of meat, the prices are not very high. In fact, they are very similar to the prices that achieve the cool animals or the goats, adult animal. And finally, this is the last type of production, that is the goats or adult animals that more or less cover the 35% of the total production. In this case, as I mentioned before, usually this type of production comes from the cool animals that are the animals that are eliminated from the herd by different reasons, but mainly because they are very old. They cannot cover the expectation of production and reproduction that in a usual farm, in a farm that have to have some benefits we need. So because of that, these animals are discarded from the herd. And finally, you have here some references in the case you want to look for more information about goat production system, and also about sustainable goat production. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you have enjoyed this lesson, and I hope you have enjoyed the course about different aspects of animals production.